Hi everyone, today we're going to go through our SHARK graduate portfolio and what that's going to entail. The goal of the portfolio is to provide a more accurate portrait of yourself and to give you a different way to demonstrate the skills and masteries that you've accomplished in the different core competencies. This is also going to give you a chance to reflect on how these accomplishments have shaped your educational, professional, and personal goals. The requirements for the portfolio are pretty straightforward. You're going to demonstrate a mastery of the competencies using specific evidence such as projects, essays, videos, or pictures, um, podcasts, things of that nature. And then the written justification, where you're going to talk about the connection between the evidence and the competency credits you've chosen. At the end of your portfolio, you're going to write a final reflection that answers the final reflection questions. And the whole thing will be completed through Canvas ePortfolios, and I'll be teaching how to do that as well. And you have to complete these things individually. There's no partner or group portfolios. That doesn't mean you can't use group projects, just that all of the evidence and justifications are your own. Why should we do this? Well, it creates a more personalized and accurate representation of you as an individual than could be found in just your transcripts. It's unique to you and your experiences, and at the same time shows what important standard skills you've mastered. It also allows you to see and reflect on what you've actually learned and how you learned it, and the different ways that you'll be able to apply it in your future. And it draws on all of your high school experiences, not just your classes, but also projects you've done, the experiences you've had both in and outside of the classroom, performances you may have given, community service, and your athletics. The next thing I did with my students then was go through the things you could draw from as evidence in general. I asked them to explain different things they'd done in high school, and just list different experiences they might have had and learned from. There are 6 core competencies. The first is critical thought and reflection, then personal responsibility and integrity, scientific or quantitative fluency, creativity and innovation, ethics and social awareness, and communication and collaboration. Each of these core competencies is then made up of several credits that describe the different facets of that core competency. Mastery of a core competency is demonstrated by providing evidence of and justification for at least 2 credits for each core competency. That'll make a little bit more sense as we get further in. So the first competency, right, or big picture idea, is critical thought and reflection. And then the skills or credits that make it up are the following. The first is textual analysis that says the student will apply multiple lenses to evaluate a text and synthesize his or her own ideas. So something I might use as evidence that I've accomplished this would be like an essay I wrote my junior year that looked at how Moby Dick explores the nature of good and evil. The second credit is inferential thinking. The student will craft a hypothesis, create a product, or otherwise construct meaning from extrapolation and experience. So again, another kind of thing that I could have used for this if I were making it was I did a year-long project for my AP Environmental Science class my senior year at Fern Forest Park, where we tracked and plotted data on invasive species for them. The third credit is authentic inquiry. The student will question received wisdom, engage in meaningful research, and reflect on that research. So one of the things I could use for this was if I looked back in college, I did research on how language affects the way we view the world in a sociolinguistics class. That paper could work for this. It did an entire literature review on it. The fourth credit in this competency is interdisciplinary thought. The student will solve problems or address an issue by synthesizing knowledge from multiple fields or disciplines. So in college, I was the house manager for my sorority, and I had to use math for budgets and use the leadership and social skills I had to deal with conflicts. I used public speaking skills to engage during our corporation board meetings and to present information from those board meetings back to the sisters at the chapter. Um, the fifth credit is social and cultural knowledge. The student will show breadth and depth of knowledge in the humanities, as well as a strong understanding of changes and patterns across historical eras and geographical regions. Um, when I was in high school, I did an independent study on my own of world religions, what they believed, the major stories that made them up, how they affect the world. I did all of that just out of my own interest in why people believe the things they do around the world. I also took an international relations class in high school. I could have used projects from that for this. Um, the art history class I took in college. All of those would help deal with these kinds of things. And the last credit that makes up this competency is historical perspectives. The student will apply multiple critical lenses to past events or eras in order to generate original interpretations. I could literally use any essay I ever wrote in AP American History or my AP American Government class. Every class that ever had a class discussion or in a history or English class works for this, because you always end up talking about past events or time periods and then interpret them in your own way. And so again, I ended the lesson here and had students then post to the Nearpod some of their own assignments or projects or activities that they thought they might be able to use that might have fallen under that and which credit it would be used for. And during this particular activity for the Nearpod, I put up the credits on the board so they could view those and look at them all at once while they were typing. And I did that just in this little bit of a class period, and then would stop and we would do the next one on a different class period day. So each of these ended up only taking one class period or a portion of a class period. The second competency is personal responsibility and integrity, and it too is made up of, I think, 6 credits. The first is the mind-body balance. The student will plan and maintain over an extended period a mind-body program that fits his or her needs and goals. So when I was in high school, I figure skated and it kept me in good shape physically, but it was also really important because anytime I was stressed out, I knew I would be able to skate and it would provide stress relief and also gave me social time. Even now as an adult, I color almost every single day because it helps create a meditative state that will help me relax and deal with stress. The second credit is self-directed learning. The student will plan, organize, and execute a program of intellectual growth tailored to their learning profile. So when I was in high school, I found books on Japanese and started teaching myself. Now I use Rosetta Stone and Duolingo when I want to learn and practice language. But back in the 90s, when I was in school, I had to actually find books to use. The third credit is growth mindset. The student will demonstrate a growth mindset and approach to meeting obstacles and facing challenges. So one of the ways that when I was in school I tried to work to grow as a writer was I would compare the papers I wrote for the same class and then would meet with my teacher, or in college my professor, multiple times to improve. Once camped outside of my freshman literature classes TA's office for the entirety of her office hours, rewriting and revising the drafts of the same paper. just to continue growing and getting better feedback until I felt like it was as good as I could get it. The fourth credit, the student will take responsibility, develop vision, and lead others in pursuit of a shared goal. One of the ways I did this is I was an officer on the color guard. I was the literary magazine co-editor, both of those in high school. In college, I was our house manager for the sorority, and I was sisterhood chair at one point. And all of those things are leadership activities. The fifth credit is acting with integrity. The student will understand, promote, and embrace the codes of conduct and standards of behavior in his or her communities. This one was actually a lot harder for me because I didn't really think about what I did that would promote conduct and standards of behavior in my community when I was in high school, especially. But I was part of the Gay Straight Alliance Club at my high school, which was the first of its kind, again, late 90s. And the whole point was to help other people understand that there was no difference and to get everybody to treat other people with respect. And then the final credit in this competency is accountability. The student will accept personal responsibility for his or her actions and embrace the idea that personal accountability is critical to growth. An example of this is, personally, I worked 2 jobs at once at one point, and I accidentally scheduled myself to be at both at the same time. And rather than blame the other manager to each of the 2 managers, I acknowledged it was my fault and worked the issue out with my manager so that I was able to work both jobs that same day still, despite the strange overlap for a part of the day. You might have evidence of things like this today as emails that with your teachers or remind messages with your teachers that show that you're holding yourself accountable for your own behavior. And again, take a moment just to fill in some of the things that you might be able to use for this competency and which credit it would go with. The next competency is scientific or quantitative fluency. The first credit for that is quantitative modeling. The student will create accurate mathematical representations of real-world phenomenon. I could have used the project I did in physics my senior year demonstrating how torque worked using my color guard rifle. The second credit is proficiency with technology. The student will demonstrate a sound understanding of and use technology concepts, systems, and operations. Back when I was in high school, I just set up 2 VCRs, which you guys, most of you have probably never seen one of. I created a video and edited it using those 2 VCRs to splice tape together about a day in my life. The third credit is critical consumption of data. The student will critically evaluate a range of data types and sources in order to discern the value and validity of the information with which they are presented. I wrote a research paper about anime, including the sources I used and which I discarded and why, as part of a class my junior year. Again, this is back before the internet was as much of a thing, and the majority of what I did was research through books and a couple of online resources, but mostly books and articles. The fourth credit is applied analytics. The student will explain and utilize advanced statistical techniques in order to generate new solutions or knowledge. For this, I could have used my AP Chem lab reports. I think the best was probably still the AP Environmental Science project I did again in high school, because it was our own original thesis or hypothesis that we tested and tracked data for. In college, I did a study on elevator etiquette. As a teacher, I survey my students regularly in order to change how I teach to be more effective. All of these things would fall under applied analytics. Research technology is the last credit for this competency. The student will identify and productively apply relevant technological resources to conduct research and evaluate sources. So, using online databases and web resources as part of one of my research projects in high school or college um, would fit for something like this. And again, it's your turn. The next competency is creativity and innovation. The first credit is problem solving. The student will develop a unique or original solution to an existing or anticipated problem. So in college, one of the things that we found really difficult was practicing our Japanese. And so, especially for the random conversational tests we would have with our professor. And so, since we had a need to practice in a more authentic way, my friends and I started having Japanese only social nights and dinners where we would all go out and have coffee or dinner or dessert together, and we were only allowed to speak Japanese the entire time. The second credit is self expression. The student will express his or her personal experiences or perspectives in a way that is accessible and engaging to others. So, my friends and I, especially during COVID, have been doing PowerPoint nights about the things that we're really interested in and passionate about. And they're usually just funny things. My husband once did one about the really small town he's from in Oregon. Another one of our friends did one on why she loves her husband and he's just the best thing in the whole wide world. So that's one of the ways that we all engage in expressing ourselves. The third credit is technical design. The student will design unique and original solutions to technical challenges or use technology in innovative ways. So, for an art class I took in college, I created a virtual field trip where everyone could visit the exhibits that I was talking about during my presentation. Um, and that would qualify as a unique way to use technology, or at least it would have at the time. The fourth credit is artistic design. The student will create or perform an existing piece of art with technical proficiency. That's pretty much every color guard performance I ever participated in, ever. We didn't write the shows, a team of instructors wrote the shows and taught them to us, and we performed them with technical proficiency in order to win competitions. And then the last credit is visual and artistic performance. The student will create a unique work of art in at least one medium that displays creativity and technical proficiency. That would include the short stories I used to write for our literary magazine when I was in high school, and I wrote fan fiction when I was in high school. Those are both different forms of artistic performance, just done in writing. And again, this would now be your turn to come up with some things that you've done that you might use for this competency and the different credits. Another of the competencies is ethics and social awareness. This is legitimately the hardest of all of the competencies for me. The first credit is activism and justice. The student will respond actively to issues of social or environmental justice by making positive, meaningful change. I attended marches for Marjory Stoneman Douglas and for Black Lives Matter. And when I lived in DC, I went to a couple of the different protests and rallies that were at the Capitol. In terms of environmental justice, I guess, or engaging in environmental issues, I drive a hybrid car now, and I regularly use like the FPNL website to check and see what the changes we can make to lower our energy usage at home. The second credit is empathy and advocacy. The student will contribute to the inclusion and awareness of diversity in his or her community by courageously defending the rights of others with differing perspectives. Um, this was probably the hardest thing for me to come up with anything for in terms of what I did, at least in high school, um, or even really in college. Once I started teaching, one of the things I took a course on and then ended up teaching and helping other teachers with was teaching economically diverse populations, um, and how to be more accessible in your curriculum and understanding in your curriculum of their needs. The third credit is awareness and social inclusion. The student will engage with others who are personally and culturally different from him or herself while considering all stakeholders and affected persons in decision-making processes. So one of the things I did when I was in college was studied abroad. And I was part of a club, both when I was abroad and in America, that helped introduce um, exchange students to American life. And when I was overseas, it helped exchange students adjust to life in Japan, and help them practice their English. And that one's a short one. There are only 3 credits under ethics and social awareness. So now take a moment and think about what you've done that you might use for this competency and which credit it would fit for. And last but not least is communication and collaboration. The first credit in this competency is community collaboration. The student will work with a group, club, or organization in his or her community to accomplish a shared goal. The first thing I could think of was I belonged to Florida Future Educators of America in high school, where I worked as part of a teacher's aide and I helped promote education as a career. And we worked as a club to support the teachers within our school. We ran all of the Teacher Appreciation Week activities, things like that. The second credit is cross-cultural connection. The student will communicate fluently and fully in a foreign language on a variety of topics. I took Japanese in college and Spanish in high school, and I could use projects from either of those that would show that I'm able to communicate fluently in a foreign language. The third credit is public deliberation. The student will present and defend a complex set of claims within a dialectal environment. So anytime that we've had a Harkness, or I had when I was in high school Socratic seminars, those would fall in that kind of a category for this. Or when I was in high school, I had to teach a poetry term in my English class while also teaching a poem that utilized that term. And when I did that, and supported the meaning behind it and the use of the poetry element that I was teaching, that would have fallen under public deliberation. The fourth is persuasive argumentation. The student will articulate and defend a well-supported position in one or more modalities. Any of the campaign speeches when I ran for club office for FFEA, and our letters of intent when I was in college for part of my sorority for officer positions that I wanted then. The fifth credit is written proficiency. The student will craft precise, clear, and effective writing to convey meaning across a range of topics. Any essay from any class would work for this. One of the things that I made in high school was a children's book using a math concept from my pre-calculus class, and we created a children's book about different types of triangles. It was a very sweet romance from about an acute triangle and an obtuse triangle finally coming together. And the last credit was publication and presentation. The student will present his or her work to an authentic audience. So anytime I was published in the literary magazine in high school worked for this. Outside of high school, once I was a stay-at-home mom, I published articles as part of the Smite Community Game Magazine. Those also are part of publication and presentation. In my class, one of the YouTube videos or the blogs that we did would have counted for something like this too. And then this is your last chance. Go ahead and think about what you might have done that you would use for this competency and which credit it would count under. When I taught this, I did one of these credits per class period, and I only did 2 credits a week until the second week I taught 3 credits, and I paired the ethics and social awareness credit since it's or competency since it only has 3 credits with one of the other competencies to do that day, so that we did 2 that one day and we're able to get through all of them since you can't divide it equally by 2. Okay, and that's it. If you have any questions about the Nearpod or would like a copy of it, just let me know. I am happy to help out.